There's someone in your life right now who's falling apart, and you have no idea. They laugh at your jokes, they show up to work every day, they ask how you're doing with what seems like genuine interest. Their social media looks fine, maybe even enviable. They're functioning, contributing, present in all the ways that matter to the outside world. But inside, in the parts of themselves they've learned to hide so well that even they sometimes forget they exist, they're crying, screaming actually, collapsing under a weight that nobody else can see. And the most terrifying part isn't that they're suffering. The most terrifying part is how good they've become at making sure you never find out. This is about the person crying in silence. And if you listen carefully enough, this might be about you. Let me tell you about someone named Michael. On paper, Michael's life looked like a success story. He was a senior manager at a tech company, married with 2 kids, homeowner in a good neighborhood, respected by his colleagues, loved by his family. If you asked anyone who knew him to describe Michael, they'd use words like capable and steady and the guy you can count on. Michael was the person who stayed late to help colleagues with projects. He was the dad who never missed a soccer game. He was the husband who remembered anniversaries and took out the trash without being asked. He was, by every external measure, doing well. What nobody knew was that Michael spent an hour every night sitting in his car in the garage before going inside his house, just trying to remember how to breathe. What nobody saw was the way his hands shook when he was alone, or how he'd started keeping a bottle of whiskey in his desk drawer at work, or how he'd wake up at 3 in the morning with his heart racing and a certainty that everything was about to collapse. What nobody heard was the voice in his head that said over and over, "You're failing, you're failing. Everyone's going to find out you're failing." Michael was drowning in plain sight, and he was so skilled at hiding it that when he finally broke down completely, when the facade finally shattered, everyone around him was shocked. They said things like, "I had no idea," and "He seemed fine," and "Why didn't he say something?" But here's the question we need to sit with. Why didn't he say something? Why do people like Michael, and maybe people like you, suffer in complete silence while maintaining a perfect exterior? What makes someone choose to cry where nobody can hear them rather than reach out for help? The answer to that question reveals something profound about how we've structured our society, how we understand strength and weakness, and how we've collectively agreed to perform wellness even when we're dying inside. Let's start with something most people don't talk about: the performance of being okay. From a very young age, we learn that there's a right way to be, a socially acceptable level of struggle, a boundary beyond which our pain becomes inconvenient or uncomfortable for others. Think about it. When someone asks, "How are you?" they're not actually asking for an honest accounting of your internal state. They're performing a social ritual, and the expected response is fine or good or hanging in there. If you actually answer honestly, if you say, "I'm struggling," or "I'm not okay," you can see the discomfort cross their face. You violated the unspoken contract. You've made things awkward. So we learn very early and very well to give the expected response. We learn to smile when we feel like crying. We learn to say, "I'm good," when we're falling apart. We learn to keep our pain private, to handle our struggles alone, to present a functional exterior regardless of our interior chaos. And for a while, this works. It's adaptive, actually. It allows us to navigate social situations without burdening others. It allows us to keep our jobs and our relationships and our reputations intact. It allows us to maintain the illusion of control in a world that often feels uncontrollable. But here's what happens over time. The performance becomes a reality, at least in terms of how others perceive us. We get so good at pretending to be okay that everyone actually believes we are okay. And then, when we're really not okay, when we're past the point of being able to handle it alone, we look around and realize we've trained everyone in our lives to never look deeper, to never question the facade, to take our "I'm fine" at face value. We've built a prison of our own competence, and now we're locked inside it with nobody aware that we're trapped. There's a specific type of person who's especially prone to crying in silence, and our society creates them systematically. They're the responsible ones, the caretakers, the people everyone else leans on, the ones who are always strong, always capable, always handling things. These are the people who learned early that their value comes from being useful, from not being a burden, from being the solution rather than the problem. And these people, these pillars that hold up everyone else, are often the ones who are crumbling inside while maintaining a perfect exterior. Think about the mother who takes care of everyone in her family, who manages the household and the schedules and the emotional labor, who never complains and never asks for help because she's supposed to be the one who has it all together. Think about the eldest sibling who raised their younger brothers and sisters, who learned that their own needs always came second, who became an adult before they finished being a child. Think about the colleague everyone describes as so capable, the one who gets assigned the hardest projects because they always deliver, the one who's never allowed to have an off day because too many people are depending on them. These people carry the weight of the world, and they do it silently because they've internalized the message that being the strong one means never showing weakness. They've learned that the moment they admit they're struggling, they'll lose the thing that makes them valuable. They'll become the problem instead of the solution. They'll be letting everyone down. So they keep carrying the weight, and the weight gets heavier, and they get more tired, and still they don't say anything because saying something feels impossible, feels like failure, feels like betraying their fundamental identity as the person who can handle anything. But here's the cruel irony. The stronger you appear, the less support you receive. The more competent you seem, the less people think to check in on you. The better you are at hiding your pain, the more isolated you become in it. Michael's colleagues never asked him how he was really doing because he seemed fine. His wife never noticed his nightly ritual in the garage because by the time he came inside, he'd reassembled the mask. His friends never reached out because he was always the one reaching out to them, always asking about their problems, never hinting that he had any of his own. This creates a devastating feedback loop. You hide your pain because you don't want to burden others. Others don't notice your pain because you've hidden it so well. You interpret their lack of noticing as confirmation that you need to keep hiding it. You hide it even more carefully. You become even more isolated. The gap between your interior experience and your exterior presentation grows wider and wider until it feels like you're living two completely separate lives, and the only one that feels real is the one nobody else can see. There's something else happening here too, something darker and more insidious. When you cry in silence for long enough, when you suffer alone for long enough, you start to believe that your pain isn't valid unless it's visible. You start to think that if people who love you can't see you're struggling, then maybe you're not really struggling. Maybe you're just weak. Maybe everyone else handles these things better. Maybe you're making too big a deal out of nothing. This is the gaslighting we do to ourselves, the way we minimize our own suffering because it doesn't match the dramatic, visible version of suffering we see represented in media and stories. Real breakdown looks like Michael sitting in his car. Real depression looks like getting up every morning and going to work and smiling at appropriate times while feeling completely hollow inside. Real anxiety looks like appearing calm and competent while your thoughts are racing so fast you can't barely hold on to them. Real trauma looks like functioning normally while carrying a weight that would crush most people. But we've created a narrative where suffering is supposed to be obvious, where pain is supposed to be dramatic, where people who are really struggling are supposed to look like they're struggling. So when our suffering is quiet, when our pain is invisible, we doubt whether it's even real. Let me tell you what happened to Michael. It took a year of sitting in that garage every night before something finally broke. It wasn't dramatic. He didn't have a screaming breakdown or a visible crisis. He just couldn't get out of his car one evening. His wife came looking for him and found him sitting there, staring at nothing, unable to move. And when she asked what was wrong, when she finally saw past the performance he'd been maintaining, he couldn't even explain it. The words wouldn't come. How do you explain a year of silent drowning to someone who thought you were swimming fine? But here's what his wife said, and this is important. I knew something was wrong. I knew for months, but every time I asked, you said you were fine, and I didn't want to push because I thought maybe I was imagining it. Both of them had failed each other, but not through malice or lack of love. They'd failed each other through a shared belief in the performance, through mutual respect for the facade, through collectively agreeing to not look too closely at the cracks that were forming. This is the tragedy of the person crying in silence. They're not alone because nobody cares. They're alone because they've become too skilled at hiding, and the people around them have become too well trained at not pushing past the surface level. Everyone's complicit in maintaining the illusion, and everyone's suffering because of it. The person crying carries the burden alone, and the people who love them carry the guilt of not noticing, and nobody's actually okay, but everyone's pretending to be. So what do we do about this? How do we break this cycle? The answer is uncomfortable because it requires vulnerability on a level most of us aren't prepared for. It requires the person who's crying in silence to take the terrifying step of making their pain visible, even when every instinct tells them to keep hiding it. And it requires everyone else to develop the courage to look beneath the surface, to not accept "I'm fine" at face value, to push gently but persistently when we sense something's wrong. Let's talk about the first part, making pain visible. If you're the person crying in silence, if you recognize yourself in Michael's story, I need you to understand something. Your pain doesn't need to be dramatic or extreme or perfectly articulated to be valid. You don't need to wait until you're in crisis to reach out. You don't need to have it all figured out before you say, "I'm struggling." The voice in your head that says you're being dramatic or weak or attention-seeking, the voice that says everyone has problems and yours aren't special enough to bother anyone with, that voice is lying to you. That voice is the internalized performance speaking, trying to keep you quiet, trying to maintain the facade, even when the facade is killing you. Here's what making pain visible actually looks like. It's texting a friend and saying, "I'm not okay, I need to talk." It's telling your partner, "I've been pretending I'm fine, but I'm really not." It's admitting to your doctor that you're not just tired, you're exhausted in a way that sleep doesn't fix. It's saying out loud, "I need help," even when it feels like the hardest words you've ever spoken. It doesn't need to be dramatic. It doesn't need to be a crisis. It just needs to be honest. It just needs to crack the performance enough to let someone see what's actually happening inside. And yes, this is terrifying. Yes, you risk being dismissed or minimized or told to just push through. Yes, some people won't know how to respond and will make you feel worse instead of better. Yes, you might lose the identity you've built as the strong one, the capable one, the person who has it all together. But here's the truth. That identity was killing you anyway. That strength was a performance, not a reality. That capability came at the cost of your well-being, and maintaining it isn't sustainable. The person you've been pretending to be can't exist forever. Eventually, the gap between the performance and the reality becomes too wide, and something breaks. The question is, do you want to choose when and how that breaking happens? Or do you want to wait until the decision is made for you? Because it will be made for you eventually. Michael's breaking happened in his garage, but it could have happened at work or while driving or in front of his kids. The pressure has to release somewhere. The only choice you have is whether to release it in a controlled way by asking for help or in an uncontrolled way when your system finally gives out. Now let's talk about the second part, learning to see the people crying in silence around us. Because if you're not currently the person suffering silently, you're probably close to someone who is, even if you don't realize it. And there are things you can do, ways you can show up that create space for people to be honest about their pain without forcing them to perform wellness. First, stop accepting "I'm fine" at face value when your instinct tells you something's wrong. When someone you care about seems off, when their energy feels different, when something in your gut says they're not okay, trust that instinct. Ask twice, ask 3 times. Say, I know you said you're fine, but I'm worried about you. Can we really talk? Give them permission to be not okay in your presence. Show them that you can handle their honesty, that their pain won't be too much for you, that they won't lose your respect or love by admitting they're struggling. Second, share your own struggles. Be honest about your own difficulties. Break the performance in your own life, and it gives others permission to break it too. When someone asks how you are, occasionally give a real answer. I'm having a hard week, actually. I've been anxious about something. Honestly, I'm not great. Not as a performance of suffering, but as a genuine sharing of human experience. This signals to the people around you that vulnerability is safe, that imperfection is acceptable, that you understand what it's like to not be okay. Third, offer specific help rather than general offers. Let me know if you need anything sounds supportive, but it puts the burden on the struggling person to identify what they need and then ask for it, which is often impossible when you're barely holding it together. Instead, offer specific things. I'm bringing you dinner on Tuesday. Can I come sit with you this weekend? I'm going to call you tomorrow to check in. Take away the decision, the asking, the feeling that they're burdening you. Just show up. And fourth, understand that helping someone who's crying in silence isn't about fixing them or solving their problems. It's about witnessing their pain, about sitting with them in it, about letting them know they're not alone. You don't need to have answers. You don't need to make it better. You just need to see them, really see them, and let them know that being seen doesn't make them weak or burdensome or broken. There's a beautiful concept in Japanese culture called kizuna, which refers to the emotional bonds between people that are formed through shared experiences, especially shared difficulties. The word literally means ties or bonds, but it carries a deeper meaning about how human connection is strengthened not through shared happiness alone, but through being present for each other's pain. When you sit with someone in their darkness, when you witness their silent tears, when you hold space for their struggle without trying to fix it or minimize it, you're creating kizuna. You're deepening the bonds that make us human. The person crying in silence needs 2 things: the courage to make their pain visible, and people in their lives who have the courage to see it. Both parts are hard. Both parts require us to go against everything we've been taught about strength and independence and not being a burden. Both parts require vulnerability, which is perhaps the most courageous thing any of us can practice. Here's what I want you to understand if you're the person crying in silence. Your pain is real, even if nobody sees it. Your struggle is valid, even if you're still functioning. Your need for help is legitimate, even if you're managing to keep going. The fact that you're holding it together doesn't mean you're fine. It means you're exhausted. It means you're reaching the end of your capacity. It means you need support before you break completely, not after. And you deserve that support, not because you've earned it through suffering enough, not because you've proven your pain is bad enough to warrant attention, but simply because you're human, and humans are not meant to carry their pain alone. We're social creatures. We're built for connection, for mutual support, for sharing both joy and sorrow. The isolated strength we valorized in our culture, the I don't need anyone mentality, the pride in never asking for help, these are not virtues. These are maladaptive responses to a world that's forgotten how to care for its wounded. You're allowed to not be okay. You're allowed to struggle. You're allowed to need help. You're allowed to be the one who needs support instead of always being the one giving it. You're allowed to let the facade crack. You're allowed to cry where people can hear you instead of only in the silence where nobody knows. You're allowed to be fully human, which includes being sometimes broken, sometimes lost, sometimes overwhelmed by the weight of existence. And here's what I want you to understand if you're not currently the person crying in silence. Someone you love is struggling more than you realize. Someone in your life is maintaining a performance that's costing them everything. Someone close to you is crying where you can't hear them, and you have the opportunity right now, today, to create a space where they don't have to hide anymore. You have the opportunity to be the person who sees past the performance, who asks the questions that need asking, who shows up in ways that matter. It's not about being a perfect friend or a professional therapist or having all the answers. It's just about being willing to sit in the discomfort of someone else's pain, to not look away when things get hard, to stay present when it would be easier to accept the facade and move on. It's about loving people enough to not let them suffer alone, even when they're very skilled at making that suffering invisible. Michael eventually got help. It took months of therapy and medication and learning to be honest about his struggles. He had to unlearn years of performing wellness and learn how to actually be well, or at least to be honest about when he wasn't. His relationships deepened because he let people see his vulnerability. His work improved because he stopped trying to maintain an impossible standard of constant capability. His life became smaller in some ways. He took on less, said no more, protected his energy more carefully, but it became more real, more sustainable, more actually livable. He told me something once that I think about often. He said, "I thought if people knew how much I was struggling, I'd lose everything. But the truth is, I'd already lost everything that mattered. I'd lost myself. I'd lost genuine connection. I'd lost the ability to feel anything beyond exhaustion and fear. When I finally let people see me, really see me, I didn't lose what I thought I'd lose. I got back what I'd already given up. The ability to be real, to be known, to be loved, not for how well I perform, but for who I actually am." That's what's waiting on the other side of the silence. Not perfection, not the absence of struggle, not a life free from pain, but the possibility of being known in your pain, of being supported through your struggle, of not having to carry everything alone anymore. The possibility of crying where people can hear you and having them stay, and discovering that your tears don't make you weak or burdensome or less worthy of love. They just make you human. And being human, fully human, with all its mess and vulnerability and need for connection, that's enough. It's always been enough. You just forgot that while you were busy performing strength you didn't really feel. So if you're crying in silence right now, this is your invitation to let someone hear you. Not because you've reached crisis point, not because you've earned the right to struggle visibly, but simply because you deserve to be seen, to be known, to be supported. The performance of wellness is costing you more than you realize. And on the other side of dropping that performance is something that might not look like strength, but feels a lot more like freedom. The freedom to be real, the freedom to be vulnerable, the freedom to be exactly as okay or not okay as you actually are. And if someone you love is crying in silence, this is your reminder to look closer, to ask again, to not accept the performance even when it's convincing, to love people enough to see past what they show you to what they're hiding, to create the space where silent tears can become visible ones, where suffering alone can become suffering together, where the weight someone's been carrying can finally be shared. Because at the end of everything, at the bottom of all our performances and facades and carefully maintained exteriors, we're just humans trying to survive in a world that's often too heavy to carry alone. And we were never meant to carry it alone. We were meant to see each other, to hold each other, to share the weight. That's not weakness. That's what makes us human. That's what makes us capable of not just surviving, but actually living together. Seen, known, real, and finally, no longer crying in silence.